Welcome back to the shop, everybody. We're going to begin where we left off. We're using Izzy skirt washers to fasten the top, drilling the holes for those. Take a spade bit, make the hole larger. The washer recesses in and allows for expansion and contraction of the top. Sometimes it's easier to work on the floor, and you'll get some help, if you're lucky, from the black horse in the shop.
Tell him anybody that gets on the floor is fair game.
Gives you a little better idea what we're up to here. Time to make some doors. Woohoo! Here I'm marking the door panels so that I know they fit in between. We're going to cross our fingers here and cut these off. Fingers crossed. Hoping that we just didn't make a mistake. But I think we'll be okay. Okay, so here are my doors. You might think to yourself, okay, they're just simple inset doors, raised panel doors, however you want to say it. But the complication becomes, I want this to be able to inset into the panel, into the cabinet, while remaining in the center of this opening, that this opening has to rest or has to fall on these. So there's a tremendous amount of math and figuring here, and the fact that these things take 4 hours to carve, I have done a huge amount of checking and rechecking and checking. We have the width right, as you saw a minute ago. Now we're going to cut for height, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed, because the idea is, after I have that the right size, this is the right size, I'm going to cut a rabbet all the way around, 3/8 of an inch deep, and I'm going to inset this into the door, half the distance of the thickness of the door. The other half will fall inside that cavity. So as you can imagine, I've gotten a lot more gray doing this. Keep your fingers crossed. And for one more little added bit of complexity, I'm going to use this thing, my new, made by me, mortising jig. We're going to put these together with loose tenon joinery. Not something I do every day, but we're going to give it a shot. Oh boy. Okay, so I wanted to show you the value of my taper jig in another video, but unfortunately I couldn't, because the piece I was trying to cut was too big. But in this case, as you can see, I've got some weird shapes on the end of this little piece of plywood. I need a straight edge on this thing so that I can cut some 3/4 inch strips out of it. If you put this in your taper jig so that the irregular shape is just hanging off, lock it down like so. Believe me, that's not going anywhere. Let's make sure the cabinet's not in the way. It is. crash, bang. Turn on the machine, raise the blade. Safety first. Run it through. I now have a dead straight edge to work off of my fence. This tool is awesome. If you don't have one of these, I highly recommend you make one. Pretty straightforward, some clamps, a runner, a block back here to stop your stop. Golden. Now I can slide my fence over and cut my 3/4 inch strips and have perfectly straight pieces. Woohoo! So here's what I needed the straight strips for. I'm going to use these as fences with my mortising bit, and I'm going to slide along these sides, cutting a perfectly straight line just over that line to give me room for expansion on my panel on both sides. I'm going to freehand this across the bottom, getting as close as I can, and when we get done we'll have a recess that I can pull apart and have both halves. Now that sounded like a great theory, but in reality it was a fail. The base was too small and it fell into the mortise and I couldn't continue. So I had to do some fancy smanchy, and you'll see what I did here in just a second. I made a new base. And so you see, the jig works. Rounding the corner on the panels so that I don't have to get a chisel out. Sure doesn't look like much, but it can be awful complicated making that little bitty slot land where you want it to. Making the actual loose tenons here. And we will prove that they fit. Come around the other side of the table so I get a little better angle for you. Just like that, loose tenon joinery. Pretty awesome. Here we'll cut them to length. Table saw. That's not a table saw, that's a bandsaw. Okay everybody, here we go, the moment of truth. Time to put the yellow goop on the door frame. Put a little down in here in this loose tenon. Yeehaw! Put a little down here in this loose tenon. Yeehaw! It was so good, let's do it again. Alright. I gotta play Picasso here. Not prepared for class. If anybody has any negative comments, I'll put them right in here for you in the vacuum. Here I'm scribing a line so I know where I'm going to put the screw holes. Yes, I'm going to be using screws. This fancy tool allows you to lay your screws out in an even spacing. Grabbing the corner on each end and marking in the center of each of those little cutouts on the tool. Crosshair for the awl. Alright, so here's where the fun comes in, putting these two pieces together. Now, I'm going to screw these panels onto these doors. And before anybody starts screaming at me about expansion and contraction, I'm oversizing the holes and wobbling the drill to create space so this thing can expand and contract. On the back side of these, I have to mount the carriage that's going to take the hamper portion of this. And I want to be able to remove these in case we have to for building, etc. So let me show you how we're putting these together. Having 3 drills makes your life a whole lot easier if you're lucky enough to have that many. I've got the first drill set up as a pilot hole, and I'm using the very edge of the countersink as my depth gauge. The second drill is the pass-through drill for the screws, and the third drill is the drill I'm using to set the screws in. After I went through and put all these marks in, I decided I really didn't need that many screws, so we're going to use the 2 end ones and the center one on the edges, this center one here in the middle. The one in the center middle, I'm not expanding the hole because contraction and expansion here will be extremely minimal. We're doing this similar to what we would do if we had a breadboard end. And to be on the safe side, I'm adding these washers to these 3/4 inch pan head screws, just so that I don't poke through the other side. Let me show you how we're going about this. Oop, almost made a little boo-boo. I've got these marks in too far. I don't want to go in that deep. We're going to go in there. And there. First drill. That holds it still when I put in the rest of the pilots. Take these guys back out so I don't have to worry about depth stops and etc. to go through the panel. I'll show you what I mean by that. Pop this guy loose. Bring him over here. Drill number 3. Wobble the hole. Somebody should hook up a compressor. You think? These guys back in. Washers back on. Head rush from blowing all that dust out. And away we go. Of course, this all has to be sanded yet. Them are sharp little boogers too. They bite. And just like that, bing bang boom. Here I'm beginning the carriage, and we're going to use a half lap joint on this carriage, 3/4 by 3/4 oak pieces. And man, how that bandsaw makes quick work of a lap joint. So much easier than trying to do things with the table saw. Quick and easy. And here's how we're going to assemble it. It's a simple rectangle that'll fit underneath the garbage can that's actually going to go in these and make the hamper portion, like so. Now these garbage cans had to be modified, and I used a multi-tool to do that. But here we're going to attach the carriage to the bottom, again with drills, screws, and oversized holes. So we don't have to worry about expansion here either, although I have the grain running in the same direction on these pieces. And no glue on the piece of the stiles that are not running in the same direction. Some clamps, some braces to keep it at 90. Little putzing around here because I couldn't get my clamps in the right position. That always happens after you apply the glue, of course. Top piece in, spring clamps to hold it in place. Just like so. Now here I'm going to modify the garbage can. The design called for the width of that can without that lip on there. That was actually a boo-boo. I didn't calculate for that lip, that overhang. But as you'll see, it worked out fairly well because by modifying this, I was able to create the catch for the actual door so that the boards didn't fall open or the door didn't fall open. Quicker method here. Okay, so the brace wants to sit at an angle. I'm going to correct that with this little support block with an angle on this disc sander, and I'm going to take off just enough until the top edge closes when I push this straight in, and that's enough to tip this block enough to compensate for this being tipped out. Now that will go down and switch my angle, so this guy will land correctly, like so. I gotta shorten this up, obviously. Another high stress practice. I want to talk about stressful. I was dry brushing these guys here. I poured some stain on a board off camera up ahead of that door. You can't see it, but every now and again you'll see me reach for it. I put the stain on the brush and then I continue to wipe until I get just enough on there to create color on these flowers. By the time I got done doing this, I was almost shaking because I was so stressed out. One slip of that brush and it would have been a bad day. You gotta have the appropriate gear to do this kind of work. In case you're wondering, protects the contacts, protects the hair, protects the lungs. I think you've seen enough.
Pretty straightforward, but not so straightforward. I'm using a 1-inch block to space out those hinges, blue tape to hold them in place, and all to start the hole. Putting a little wax on the screws to make them turn into that oak a little easier by hand. My helper came out into the shop to help me do these hinges. And we sure do appreciate that. We were coming down to the wire on this project. This was a gift that was to be given at a shower, and the shower was the next day. So we were pushing the envelope here. Nonetheless, we were able to complete it in time. And that's a little trick. If you need to put screws in manually in hard wood, dip them in that wax and they go in 100% easier. Well, maybe not 100, but a whole lot easier. And now that they're in the correct position, we'll put the screws in the bottom half. You'll see me climb up on the bench here, and as I said in the beginning, the way I cut these things, these garbage cans, it worked out in my favor because I was able to put the screws in right there to hold the cans inside the box. And the modification created the doorstop. It was just by luck. Here we're using blue tape so that I can mark on the door for the center of the handle. Pretty straightforward. Checking to make sure I'm correct. Drilling holes through the door. Confirming that the screws are long enough. Pull the tape off, and Walla Walla, Washington, no marks on the door. Now the directions said they were 5 1/16 wide, the spacing, and that was incorrect. They were dead on at 5, so we had to make the holes just a little bigger with the drill. And we'll put these in manually. You can see the catch there on the back side of the garbage can. A little crude, but it works.
Alright, there you have it, everybody. A fancy hamper, kind of outlandish to put dirty clothes in, but I hope you got something out of this video. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope maybe you learned something from it. As always, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Give us a like, a share, and a comment, and I'll catch you on the next one. How do they work again? Like magic?